Thank you, Ashish. I was for 5 years roundabout with the Department of IT, and now I am handling the establishment of future systems and a company for the goods and services tax, which is expected to come across the country. Uh, when we talk about eGov service delivery here, I would like to go back to around 2006 or so, when actually the National E-Governance Plan, which Mr. Satyanarayana spoke about in the morning session, was formulated, and with about 26 mission mode projects then, which has now gone up to 31 projects. That was a time when really there was a need to articulate the requirement of e-governance, to emphasize that projects need to be conceptualized, to bring the focus on service delivery, to bring the focus on service levels, to bring a monitoring mechanism, then to put in place supporting infrastructure. That is, you set up common service centers, you put up data centers. Ashish Sanyal here was instrumental in putting a lot of those things in place, like the SWAN network and the CSCs. So a lot of stuff was done there at the back end to, one, make the awareness happen, work with individual ministries and departments to emphasize on service delivery, to change the whole paradigm of governance to one focused on delivering services, and also to create the support mechanisms at the back end to enable all of this to happen, like put up an infrastructure in the form of networks and all that, right? With the result, what has today happened is most of these projects which were identified, they have now got money. I mean, a lot of them have moved, they have got themselves sanctions, and that is no small affair. I mean, that's no mean deal. It takes a lot of effort in the government to go and get money for a project, and they have all got it for themselves. So why is it that today, with so many projects having money raring to go across the country, why is it that we do not have all services delivered today through the network and through the front ends, electronic front ends and all that? Why is it that today, like CSCs are like so many theaters have been set up across the country, but why is it that no movies are showing? Why it is that it's not happening? So that is where we need to look at where is the gap in the service delivery that is happening. The gap is in execution. The point is, it's one thing to conceptualize, to go through PPTs, through concept documents, and a lot of consultants have been doing that over the past years, making people aware what is to be done. But going forward, making that how happen has been a big gap. And that is where, the need to put in new structures and mechanisms within the government at the back end to enable it, that is now to be the focus area. To me, that seems to be the biggest gap today. Today, the only way the government knows how to do IT systems is to get into long procurement processes. Every project takes about 6 months to 2 years or 3 years of procurements. And the whole effort is spent on something which actually delivers no value in the end. I know of projects which have spent just 3 years deciding whether to buy a Sun, HP or IBM, and any of these three would have done the job, because there's nothing to do with the system. It is to do something entirely something different. But the whole focus, the effort is spent on that. You get the money, but then you don't know how to spend it. You get into a long process. And if you look at the scale of this, which has to be done across the government, if we look at municipalities being 1,000 municipalities across the country which are identified, Prakash here works in the state of Maharashtra. So if every municipality has to go into 5 tenders and do that, there just isn't capacity. There just isn't a way of scaling this up and rolling it out fast. Okay. That's one part of the problem. Second, where are the people to do it? You can all say, no, we need to do BPR and process reengineering and capacity building. There just aren't enough people out there to be able to do it. And government doesn't have the mechanism today to source them and then put them into projects. So this gap in execution is happening because these enabling systems, they are not built inside the government for doing large projects. They are built for doing many, many different things, but they have not yet been tailored for doing e-governance projects. So what is the kind of thing, what's our wish list towards the future? If any department tomorrow wants to do an IT project, it should be able to go to a single window, to a single person or one entity and say, please give me the infrastructure, plug and play directly on demand. Can you give me the manpower resources on demand to conceptualize, roll out and manage? Can we do that? Then the person who is the mission leader there, who is the eGov champion, he is empowered. Then he starts working, doing the real work. Today, if a man really wants to start doing eGov service delivery, before he gets to the point where he starts delivery, it's about 2 or 3 years because he's battling the other systems to make this happen. So our idea is that, can we create structures, systems, mechanisms to enable this to happen? So to start with, one of the things which we are doing is, which was announced in the, so this brings it to what I am now working on inside the government is, in the last budget, the finance minister had announced the creation of a company. He called it the National Information Utility to enable the goods and services tax to happen across the country. So that's what we are trying to do there. We are creating an institution, an institution which today is structured as a 5149 private government structure, which has the flexibility, which has a strategic control, to which people can go, look forward to getting some resources for execution, and then go ahead and execute. Because unless you have a structure, a set of people, mechanisms to do it, projects are really not going to happen, because there is a big gap between concept and realization today. So we need to focus on creating these new institutional structures which can enable this to happen. Second, on people. Inside every ministry, every department that is executing, you need skills for conceptualization, you need skills for project execution, implementation, maintenance, rollout. And the story is not over, because by the time you are in the maintenance phase, the first version is already over. You have to rejig the second version, right? So this kind of systems, capacities inside, how do you create? There is a lot of talk. There was a talk earlier that let us take and let us train people. Let us train. So by putting a person through a 2-week training, a government officer who is not on IT cannot start delivering IT tomorrow. It's not a question of, you need people with years of experience to come in and start working on these projects. So here is a clear gap. How do you get people, how do you get skills inside the government to work on these projects? The skills today which are available in the private sector, the skills today which a government of US or Canada is able to tap in India and take for their projects, but the government of India can't take for its own projects. Skills are available. We are ready to pay. We've got crores of money, but we are not able to tap it. Again, there is an institutional gap. We don't have the mechanism to get in these key skills, which are today coming out of the top institutes of the country, and say, why do you go and work for the private? Why don't you come and work? There's a great project in the government. Why don't you come and work? We are not able to say that, because there is no structure to which they can plug. So if we create mechanisms to get in skills which work through these new institutions that we create and are able to be put in place to help achieve the goals that we set for e-governance, very little of this will happen. So that is where another HR committee has been set up, headed by Mr. Nilakani. I'm also a member of that, where we are trying to see what structures and institutions that we create can make us tap these resources across the country and work closely with the government, as part of the government, to work. There is one thing is to outsource and work as a vendor. That is one model. That model is understood. But how do you get them inside to work as part of the government? Maybe write on files, to maybe move decisions. So we need these skills inside the government. So this is the second clear gap that we are plugging through an institutional mechanism. The third thing, which is actually linked to the first also, is trying to use new technologies like the cloud and things like that, where we are able to cut short this huge amount of time that is spent on procurements. Can there be a clear platform to which any government entity which wants to do a project is able to plug in, get resources, both in terms of processing power, storage, application development expertise, environment, everything, straight away without wasting any time in going through lengthy requests and procurements? Because today, these are the roadblocks to actually achieving the objective. So if we can create mechanisms where these new technologies can be used, where they can be shared across multiple departments, across multiple states, where these silos can break down, that is when we can really scale up the operations. As an example, the kind of entity which we are trying to set up today inside the government is something that is collectively owned by the central and state governments. So if they own it collectively, they can collectively share an infrastructure and use that, leverage that to deliver services and not waste time in lengthy procurements and build up silos. So we need to have such shared entities with shared ownerships created. These entities would need to have mechanisms created inside them and outside to bring people in so that we get capacities in the government to deliver and execute. So these, I think, are the key to eGov service delivery today. Because the first phase of actually what is to be done and creating the demand out there has been done. So people are today waiting and watching, how are you going to deliver and execute? And unless we put these mechanisms, delivery and execution is not going to happen. So I just thought I will focus on that part and leave it to Ashish to take it further. Thank you.